Y los efectos de la guerra en Ucrania, la mayor inflación, también asestan a un duro golpe a las economías latinoamericanas que de hecho se vienen recuperando de la pandemia de COVID-19. La crecida inflacionaria, los menores ingresos fiscales de los gobiernos y un mayor peso de sus deudas son parte de la preocupación. Y charlé de estos temas con la directora gerente del Fondo Monetario Internacional, Kristalina Geogrieva.
We do face a very difficult situation with the crisis of pandemic and the war overlaying on each other, leading to slowdown in global growth and acceleration of inflation. In this environment, the IMF offers to the membership three channels of support. First, we are there with financing for needs for countries that may want to have precautionary facility or need to tap into our regular programs. The IMF has about $1 trillion of lending capacity. $300 billion is deployed. So we have a war chest of $700 billion. Second, we have provided our membership with a new allocation of special drawing rights, $650 billion. Some countries have used it already for fiscal support. Some rely on this for this year or future years. But most importantly, we are calling on countries that have received special drawing rights but have strong position, they don't need it, to on-lend through us to vulnerable, low-income, middle-income countries. We have created a new instrument. This is first time in the history of the IMF that allows us to lend long-term, up to 20 years, with over 10 years grace period for structural transformation driven by the needs to adapt to the climate crisis and to have pandemic preparedness. And the third very important channel is not financial, it is our surveillance and policy advice. Why it matters? Because we keep a hand on the pulse of each and every economy. And in this very turbulent, uncertain time, we offer unbiased policy analysis and policy advice to our members.
The war, of course, will deteriorate the debt to GDP ratio. So in broader terms, how is the IMF adjusting the current assistance programs and future ones?
Well, the IMF has proven to be very agile. Look at what we have done in the early months of 2020. We came up with massive emergency financing that was swiftly delivered to countries in need. In many cases, was the buffer against the shock the pandemic caused. And we are in a position, should that become necessary for individual countries, to again very quickly step forward, especially when countries need to borrow but want to avoid very expensive debt. We are very engaged in the issue of debt restructuring. Why? For a very sober reason. With inflation up, central banks are tightening financial conditions, servicing debt is becoming more expensive, and we know in 2020 the world borrowed more than in any other year since the Second World War. Now, servicing this debt is creating a burden, and therefore we are pressing for two things: for low-income countries and countries in distress, early debt restructuring. We are advocating for the G20 global framework for debt restructuring to deliver, and also to include broader set of countries, and we are also looking into shortcomings in the legal framework for debt restructuring that allows, for example, voucher funds to hold on participating in necessary action on debt restructuring. Bringing public and private creditors together on a country-by-country basis is a pressing necessity today. Why? Because the percentage of countries in debt distress among the low-income countries has doubled from 30% in 2015 to 60% today. If we want to avoid the risk of a debt crisis, early action is paramount, and the fund is taking very seriously our obligations in that regard.
Let's talk about the new agreement with Argentina. The government is already requesting more flexible conditions. Is that possible? How confident are you that they're going to be able to do what they say they will do?
We have come together, the government of Argentina and the IMF, with a common objective, and it is implement a program that would improve the lives of people in Argentina. We recognize that there are very difficult problems to wrestle with, some long-standing, some coming fresh because of the war in Ukraine, like accelerated inflation. And now our eyes are on implementing this program, recognizing that conditions for implementation, unfortunately, are changing. And therefore, we are going to accelerate our first review of the program to make sure that what we pursue is the right thing for Argentina today.
Last Sunday, the lower house of Congress in Mexico defeated the electricity reform proposed by the president. Do you think that will be enough to improve the environment, to attract more direct investment and foster growth?
The decision that has been taken is good for Mexico, because otherwise we would have seen a reversal of a reform that helps the Mexican economy. And it is important that steps are taken in the direction of making Mexico more vibrant. We have seen a downgrade of growth for Mexico to 2%. We know that the US is slowing down, and that impacts Mexico negatively. So focus on competitiveness in a tough time. It is so important that countries do the right thing in terms of structural reforms so they can grow and offer jobs and opportunities to people.
Your advice, the thing that you want Latin American central bankers and finance ministers to take from these meetings in Washington, what would you say?
Many in Latin America have done the right thing in the face of accelerating inflation by tightening monetary policy, and that pays off. So my message to them is be focused on the data. It would inform your actions. Don't hesitate to take them, and communicate clearly.